It's always fascinated me how something prosaic can become iconic if it hangs around long enough. Our famous tiled street signs, introduced in the late 19th century, aren't the only type from that time. Many of them were these pressed metal types as well, especially in the city centre, but for whatever reason, it's the tiled signs that have lasted the distance and become a symbol of the city. When I set out to make this video, I thought I'd try and do a bit of my usual format, try and do a bit of a history of these signs and how they came about. And to be honest, I couldn't really find anything. As an alternative, what I've done is to make a bit of a 2 or 3 minute sign spotter's guide to all the different things to look out for. So to start us off, we've got a simple one-liner, no mucking about, not even the full street name, 10 tiles, boom. Although I have to say, it's in very good condition. Then you have your bog standard 2-liners, like this one. And in the wild, you might occasionally spot a 3-liner, like this one at RAVENSDENE Park Gardens. But the one thing they all have in common is that they're all centre aligned, except for, and this is the only one I think I can find, is this one at the Mount in East Belfast. So you've got the top line left aligned and the bottom right aligned, probably made by somebody on their first day, or possibly their last. And in many cases, as with this one, the district of Belfast, this is before postcodes, you just had a district, so you lived in Belfast 3 or Belfast 14 or whatever it was. The postal district would actually be stencilled onto the brickwork underneath, and in some cases the district would actually appear on the pillar holding the sign. And in some erroneous cases, as with this sign, again I think this one's unique, the district was actually included as part of the street name, even though it shouldn't have been. To go back to these pillars, I think they themselves are also part of the preservation. The people that want to get these preserved are, the pillars are just as important as the signs as well. But there are some cases where the sign has been moved to a new pillar, and there are some cases where the pillar has remained, but a modern sign has been affixed, like this one that's been tidied up. And then we got a bonus half-size pillar around the corner as well. And it wasn't just street names that these were used for, these little tiny wee half-size tiles. You still find these, although the wards are obsolete. The signs, like this one up the Mount, remain. And of course, as I alluded to at the start, the signs back in the day in the 60s and the 70s probably weren't quite as valuable as we consider them now, so over time they were gradually replaced with other inferior designs. Ones tried to ape the look initially and then eventually just totally gave up and were just cheap and nasty looking affairs that themselves are probably 50 years old now but have absolutely no historic merit whatsoever. And some aren't bad, but they're just generic street signs, and this is the whole point, that we have it's really not important, but we have a unique identity for our street furniture, and that is what some people want to get back to. Some of the signs that we still have are fallen in disrepair and don't even make sense anymore, but a lot were probably demolished along with whatever structure they were attached to. So one of my favourite examples as a train nerd is this old Newtonards Road Upper sign that's attached to what is actually the remains of the Hollywood Arches railway bridge. And then there's the opposite signs that are still there, but to indicate a street that no longer remains. And this is Belmont Street on the Woodstock Road, which back in the day used to look like this, typical cobblestone street, and now looks like this. But I digress. I'm not the only one that wants to see our unique tile signs preserved. This guy here is the SDLP's Gary McCune, and he wants to see more of the existing signs recognised as historic structures. And in fact, some, like this one in Cherryvalley Park, already are. There are loads more, like the Beers Bridge Road one that I had earlier in the video. But Councillor McCune even wants to see lost signs replaced. And thanks to the work of a guy called John McMillan, who's Emeritus Professor of Graphic Design at Ulster University, we actually now have the unique typeface with its weird G and everything enshrined, which is why people like me can order their own replicas for their living room walls, and why also Belfast City Council is able to have updated versions like the one on LINENHALL Street for the 21st century, complete with the quarter name instead of the postal district. But although many of the signs are falling apart and showing their age, I think that's part of the charm, and personally, don't know about you, I find the value is finding the originals. Although replicas would be welcome, we know that they're not the same.